Lord, we thank you for the privilege of being a part of this convention. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for Brother Loper. What a tremendous blessing this man has been to me and to many others. And now, Lord, as he speaks to us this morning, give him the liberty that only God can give. Give him that fresh anointing of the Holy Spirit. And give him that touch from God today. Open our hearts, our ears. May we listen carefully. May it penetrate our very soul. And we'll praise you for what you do. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you, Brother Loper.
Thank you, Brother Fay. Didn't he do an outstanding job in his session? And I appreciated it so very, very much. The leadership of the bus convention said, let's get Brother Fay up and let him hit it out of the park. And then put Loper up. Well, at least they have my last name right. And after yesterday, and Dr. Gibbs, it's good to be here. And Brother Fay did an outstanding job. And our greatest need is not leadership; it's the anointing of the Holy Spirit. And I'm a firm believer in that. And so today, anything that I share needs to be taken in that context. That it's Spirit-led, and if you're doing it in the flesh, you're going to be a failure, really. You have gifts, you have graces, but without His help, we can't do what needs to be done. And so today, I'm trying to fill in for Mark Smith, Dr. Mark Smith. Everybody knows Dr. Smith's a great leader and did a great job leading Ohio Christian University. He's now at Columbia International University, doing an outstanding job there. I talked to him the other day. He called just to check in, and I said, Doc, they've got me pinch hitting for you. And he regrets not being able to be here and has a couple of major accreditation visits going on right now and couldn't come. But God is helping him there. And I'm happy to see how God's using him for the kingdom. And so today I want to simply walk through several leadership lessons perhaps that I have learned, or probably a better way of saying that is leadership lessons that I'm trying to follow. And I'm not there on all of these. It's something that I try to employ all the time in my life. John Maxwell, who we've heard from this morning just a little bit, begins his sessions with, "Hello, I'm John." That's become his trademark. And because of Brother Fay and some connections with his son and the company, I've been at some private events with Maxwell as well. And it's always that way. It's, "Hi, I'm John," whenever you meet him. And he has written a number of books on the subject of leadership, and I've gleaned from him. However, while I've read, I think, every book he's written, I'm not sure entirely, but most of them at least, I have to say that I've benefited more from biographies of great leaders than I have from leadership books. Okay, and I know that gets a little fuzzy because guys like Maxwell and others have done a great job of distilling some of these things. But I think I learned best in looking at the life of great leaders, a Winston Churchill, or a guy by the name of George C. Marshall. Anybody heard that name? Great general, World War II, behind the scenes. Wasn't as glamorous as Patton or MacArthur. But if you've read anything about World War II, you know that George C. Marshall is the reason why we were successful in that conflict. And you'll learn from reading about those fellows, great leaders, great generals, great politicians, and great churchmen and businessmen. And it's in those genres that I find inspiration. I also want to say at the outset of this session that I don't feel like I'm qualified to be here at all. And so I want you to know that I haven't arrived. And I'm learning, and I hope to just give you some of the tips that I've tried to follow in my life. Tonight, this afternoon, I want us to look first at some leadership types. And I think you'll understand where I'm going here in a moment. There are many types of leaders that exist in our world. There have been volumes of books written on the subject of leadership types, all with the idea that we need to find that leader that is within us. What kind of leader are you? Have you ever grappled with that question? Perhaps somebody has asked you that question. Perhaps you are internally saying, where do I fit? Recently, I had the administrative team at GBS go through a DISC analysis, and the DISC analysis is basically a quadrant of different types of leadership qualities that is your default. Okay, so under stress, under major pressure, what kind of leadership do you default to? And it's interesting. It's interesting as you look at this chart here that you will identify with one of these sectors more readily than the others. The dominant sector where your leadership style is direct and it's result-oriented, and you'll say things like, I don't care how you do it, just get the job done, all right? You're firm, and you hold people accountable. You tell them to do something, and you follow up, and you don't give them any room to fluctuate there, and you're strong-willed. It's your way or the highway, all right? We're not talking spiritually here, okay? This is leadership style, and it's forceful. You are the reckoning force in the room, okay? That's dominance. And then there's the influence type person who's outgoing. They're enthusiastic, they're optimistic, they're high-spirited, they're lively, okay? That's how they lead. And I think we can all think of leaders who have those components. And then there's the steadiness. You ever met anybody that's never riled up over anything? The church is on fire. Wow, okay. Very accommodating, very patient, very humble, and tactful. And then there's the conscientious leader. They analyze everything. All right, this is not me. I just want to go on record. They analyze everything, okay? They're reserved. They're precise. They are private. They're very systematic. They want a system, okay? And so, generally speaking, you fit in one of these categories more than the other, okay? Now, you will have, hopefully as you develop in your leadership abilities, you will gain some of the attributes of the others, and you'll become a well-balanced leader, okay? Now, I am, just so you know, I am a D with a little I, okay? I am a dominant type leader, but I also have abilities in the influence world, all right? And as I looked at my administrative team at GBS, there are a couple of us who are very dominant, okay? And so that means we have to recognize that, or we're going to be bumping heads, okay? I'm going to tell them to do the job, just get it done. I don't care how you do the job, get it done, and I'm going to follow up, make sure you did your job, okay? That's kind of the mantra, and the others are the same way. But I also, Dave Frederick, who is my finance guy, is very conscientious. I mean, it's a system. Don't mess with his system. If you walk in his office and say, Dave, I need a check in 30 minutes to pay this vendor, that's going to rock his world. I should have emailed him 3 hours ago and said, hey, if you have time in your checklist today, please write a check for this vendor. Okay? And when I recognize that's the way he operates, it helps me to be able to have a great relationship with him. Does that make sense? Okay? I have others. Richard Miles. How many know Dick Miles? He is steady. I mean, you're not going to get Richard Miles' blood pressure up at all. Okay? And if you do, you did something really bad, all right? He's even-tempered. He is gracious. He's gregarious. He's patient. He's humble. He's tactful, okay? And when you recognize, hey, this is who this guy is, it helps you to be able to relate to one another. All right? So keep that in mind. That's kind of the overarching concept. And if you have the opportunity to do a DISC survey, okay, a DISC analysis, it's worth the cost, okay? And And I would encourage you to do. We have an alumnus who does this for a living, and he came and did it for us as a donation to the school, for which I was extremely grateful. But there are opportunities out there. I would encourage you to do that. Now, having said what I just said, I personally believe, and you can disagree with me, that's fine. I personally believe that genetics play a part in the process. Okay? And I'm one who believes that leadership qualities are innate or they're developed very early in life. Okay? And that is controlled by birth order. How many are familiar with that? Okay? Where you're born in a family affects how you relate. My brother Rob's here, and if you knew the birth order book and knew us, you would see that he is a second-born, I'm a third-born. You would see that very readily in the way that we interact. Having said that, I believe that you can develop skills. That's right. Okay? And that's why these sessions are important, is because it helps you to become better at what you do. All right? God's called you, many of you, you're in unique positions, and God gives grace, and God gives help, and God gives abilities, but He also gives you a brain to engage and use and develop. And the longer I serve in leadership positions, the more I'm convinced that if you're going to be a quality leader, you're going to have to lead different people with different leadership types. I'm a dominant guy. I'm not going to walk into Dave Frederick's office and bully him to do anything. I'm not going to be able to get into Brother Miles' world with that forceful thing and somehow compel him out of fear to do anything. It's not going to happen. Okay? And so if I'm going to lead, I've got to figure out how to lead those individuals. Okay? And so I'm going to just do a survey of 8 leadership types. Now, these types are kind of universal, all right? This is not unique to me. If you ask anyone in the leadership world, they'd say these are the primary leadership types that exist. There's the transformational leader. And this type of leadership generally inspires staff through effective communication and by creating an environment of intellectual stimulation, okay? You're leading through, hey, if you just learn this, you'll be able to execute or do the job at hand, transformational. There's transactional leadership, and they reward performances, okay? You do good, I'll take you to lunch. You do good, you get a bonus. You do good, you can have the week off, okay? And they transact. Okay, you do what I want you to do, and I'm going to reward you for that. They also punish for bad. Okay, you don't do this, and life's not going to be fun. It's transactional leadership. Then there's servant leadership, and people who practice servant leadership, and I hope all of us have this component in our leadership. It's biblical. We believe that we're a team. Okay, we're in this together. How can I help you do your job? What can I do to make your life easier? How can I lift your load? Okay, this is servant leadership. Autocratic leadership. This is a more extreme version of the transactional. Okay, you do your job, I'll reward you as the transactional. The autocratic is you do your job. I may not give you a bonus. I hired you to do your job. I expect you to do your job. You want your paycheck on Friday? Do your job. Okay? That's the autocratic approach. They're significant control over staff, and they rarely consider a worker's suggestion or share their power. And then you have the laissez-faire leadership. Okay? This is interesting to me because I don't view this as leadership. Okay? But leadership gurus do. And this is the idea of just let them do. You hired them to do the job, let them do the job. Well, that sounds great, doesn't it? It sounds wonderful. As a leader, it sounds wonderful. I hired Brother Fay to do the job, and I just do your job, and you'll never hear from me. Well, that's great on the surface, but it's terrible management practice. Okay? And so laissez-faire literally means in French, let them do. It's a hands-off approach. And then there's the democratic leadership, also known as participative leadership. Just means you're asking for input from your team members. You're working this together. Everybody has a vote in the system, and you lead from that perspective. Then there's the bureaucratic leadership model, and that is you're at a big organization. And it just is what it is, all right? He's your boss. He may not be a great leader, but he's the boss, okay? We've all been in those situations. I remember I worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base as an auto body technician while I was in high school, and there was the boss of the body shop was terrible, but he was the boss, all right? And I remember we would have so much work lined up outside that we would never be able to get it done. And then Christmas break came, and or Christmas season came, and the body shop manager didn't want us to have to work for the 3 weeks of Christmas, about December 15th through the 1st. He didn't want us to have to work. And so we had plenty of work to do, and he said, I don't want to start any projects in case it goes over the holiday, and we don't want to muddy the system. And he said, so bring your Game Boys, bring your footballs, do whatever you want, I don't care. And I remember being so frustrated. The day went so long, I had absolutely nothing to do. Literally in a big hangar on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base all day long, throwing a football to my buddy over at the other end. All right? We were a part of a system. Okay, another thing that drove me nuts is they had a rule on base that there could be no bare metal exposed. And so they would take a bulldozer and shove a pile of dirt and rake the paint off the blade of the bulldozer. They'd bring it in and we'd have to paint it almost every single day. It would drive you absolutely crazy. But that was the system. If you want to work in this system, you just have to accept it. And there were guys who had worked there for 30 years, and they would just say, "Hey, this is job security." I look at it and say, "This is nuts." All right. Then there's charismatic leadership, and there's an overlap between charismatic and transformational, but both styles rely heavily on positive charm and personality of the leader. However, charismatic leadership usually is considered less favorable because the success of the project usually is tied to the leader. Okay? We're accomplishing, and so when the leader steps down, when the pastor leaves the church, when whatever happens, all of a sudden that church is in a lurch because everything is built around the pastor. Okay? We've all seen those types of problems. And some of that's just natural. But I want us to focus on what some people call situational leadership. And this method employs various leadership styles to lead their team. So here's the idea. Different people need different leadership types. Okay? How many respond well to a guy who says, just get it done? Go do it. How many would respond well as an employee to somebody, just do your job? How many, raise your hand, don't be afraid, just do your job. How many respond well to a boss who hands you a checklist and said, would you take care of these items? How many feel better there? Okay? And so, as a leader, I need to recognize that John Parker's going to do extremely well if I just say, go do it, man. And Andrew Stroud is going to do really well if I say, if you could accomplish these things, it would be great. And I, as a leader, need to recognize that and empower the person to do that. And in so doing, I'm liberating that person to act in their natural manner. Does that make sense? Okay? And so they're not frustrated. If I gave John a checklist, he would quit tomorrow. I would too. Okay? It just don't work that well in that environment. And so I have to learn to employ those. You'll be a far better leader if you understand what works best for specific team members. Okay? And it's your job as the leader to figure that out. Okay? Your job as the leader, put on your big boy shoes, all right? I'd say pants, but there's some ladies here, all right? It's put them on. Okay, it's your responsibility to figure that out. All right, so now, let's do something fun. If I ask you to identify your default leadership style, what would you say it is? If I were to ask you what your leadership style is, what would you say it is? Think about it for just a moment. Now, let's say I went to somebody who works in your church as a volunteer, your secretary, your bus captains, your pastors if you're a leader, a denominational leader, and I ask your team members, what kind of leader is Rob Loper? What would they say? What would they say? And here's what I want us to understand is what you believe about your leadership style may not be accurate. You may think that you're this charismatic leader. You may think that you are a democratic leader. You may think that you're whatever, a laissez-faire leader. Well, just let them do. And your team says, no. He is an autocratic leader. Okay? Oh, that hurts. You see, the people you work with likely know your leadership style better than you do. Okay? We can be blind. We can buy into a leadership style because we think this is what is cool. You know, I want to be the dominant type leader. I want to be the man in charge. I want to be this charismatic leader that everyone just follows me because I'm this great guy. But in reality, what people think of your leadership is far more important than what you think. Okay? And the sooner you figure that out, the better leader you'll be. Are you with me? Okay. All right. And then one other point, I didn't put this in the notes. And as a result of that, you may have to make adjustments that you really can't see personally. My wife has on occasion come to me and said, Rodney, remember I'm the dominant, okay? I have a little bit of the eye, but Rodney, that was a little harsh. No. Melissa, you don't understand. I'm just trying to get the job done. Melissa, you don't understand. If I don't hold them accountable in this way, it'll never happen. Rodney, you were harsh. Okay. And I go back to the person I was talking to and I say, you know, I think I came across a little hard there. Oh, yes. Oh, God, help me. Honestly. Okay? And if that person that I was too hard on happens to be in the C category, this conscientious type person, then I just destroyed them. Okay? I just rocked their world. Now, John Parker, he's good with that. He understands because he operates in that same way. Okay? But anybody else, I'm not so sure about. And let me take that a step further. And I just can't bank on the reality that John's going to be okay with that. Okay? It's awful. It's awful, but it's true. Okay? Let me just throw this in. I have it written in my Bible in the margin somewhere. Leaders by default tend to be outspoken. They tend to be critical. They tend to be judgmental. And this is tough to put into our Wesleyan theology. We tend to be self-centered. Leadership's fun, right? All right. Let me give us 3 keys that I think are important for leadership. These are not from leadership books I've read per se, so they're from biographies and other things that I've looked at. The first is this: leaders eat last. This is a Marine Corps model. And true leaders, here's the bottom line, true leaders see that their team's needs are met before their own. Okay? If you walked into a Marine chow hall, you would discover that those in leadership never go to the front of the line to get their food. If you're in a Marine encampment in the field, you will notice immediately that the lieutenant and those up the chain, officers on up, that they are the last ones to put their tents up. This is not something that is demanded by the Marine Corps. This is not something that's in their operational manual of the Marine Corps. This is something that's been beat into their head since day one, and they just follow it because they know it works. And so I ask us just to throw some application in here. What would your organization look like if you employed this model? How does this look in pastoral ministry? You know, in pastoral ministry, perhaps at the potluck dinner, you're not the first one through the line, you're the last one. I don't care if your entire church is inviting you to the front. You know how this looks in pastoral ministry? You don't use the preacher card to get discounts at the local store. Right? Don't buy into the lie that Satan would have you to believe that people owe you something because you're a minister. Don't buy into that lie. There's no end in sight. No end. And I've watched many ministries be wrecked over that right there. Never use your position to benefit yourself. Okay? Recently, and I'm giving personal illustrations because I don't know, okay, I'm not, and I hope you don't take this as I'm putting myself here, I'm not. Recently, the school bought a donor development vehicle. A donor gave some funds, and we bought it. And I was making a trip that was non-donor related. And I could go rent a car, or I could use the school car. All right? And I'm the guy to make the decision. There's no one, listen, no one's going to ask me about it. The board, they don't know whether I use the car or not. My administrators, there's not an administrator on staff that's going to come to me and say, Loper, you were out of line for using that car. Okay, I want them to have that freedom, but they're not going to. I'm the leader, right? And so I emailed all the administrators and I said, guys, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Is it okay if I use the donor car? All of them responded, yes. Okay, I knew that before I emailed them. But here's the deal. I wanted that accountability because I don't want to use my position to benefit me personally. Are you with me?
Sure.
Now. All right. Leaders eat last. Secondly, how many have been at Hope Sound and heard me say this? Never make a withdrawal without making a deposit. People are like banks. You wouldn't walk into your local bank and try to make a withdrawal without first having an account there, right? That's called robbery. Okay? And you can't do it with people either. You can't do it with organizations. And so I'm challenging you as a leader to make deposits. I'm not talking. I had a kid in my office not too long ago. He wanted to be mentored as a leader, and that is always interesting to me. You know, I'm so uncomfortable in that realm. And so I gave him this principle. And so he came back a week later and he said, man, I just don't have time to serve everybody. And I said, no, you missed the point. You missed the point. The point is, a deposit is as simple as, hey man, how are you doing today? I want you to know I appreciate you. I just deposited in his life. Next time he sees me, he's not going to run. Okay? And when I see Brother Hunt, and I say, Brother Hunt, how are things going in your world? I know you're working in the Muslim world and you've had some good inroads. How's that going? That means something to him because I remembered some data about his ministry down in North Carolina, right? I'm making deposits. And you have to be careful because if in the human, you can use it as a tool to manipulate. That's why I said at the very beginning, this is all spirit dependent, all right? But when you make deposits, later on, I can go to Brother Hunt and I say, Brother Hunt, I really need some help here. And what are the chances of him helping me after I've made a number of deposits? Then if I go up to him and I've never talked to him before and say, hey, could you go do this for me? Are you here? And the reason why some of you struggle, I shouldn't say you. The reason why some of us struggle, I do too, in getting people to do what needs to be done is because I've never made a deposit. Okay? So I'm in my first year at GBS. You know what I told the board? I said, do you know what my number one goal is this year? Make deposits. I've got to build rapport. They've got to believe in me. They've got to be able to know that if they bleed, I bleed. They've got to understand that I have their best interest at heart. Oh, I have to make decisions, and I've had to just step in front and say, we're going this way, we're not going to. I've had to do all of those things this year. But friends, I'm making deposits all along the way. Not too long ago, I hate policies. Hate them. Okay? I like them in the sense that they help govern me. But when it comes to writing one, oh man, put a gun to my head. I hate it. It's all this legal-esque language, and you got to make sure all your bases are covered. And I'm dying. The board asked me to write a policy on something, I'm dying. I hate it. Okay? Dr. Prophet loves that stuff. I know he's something wrong with him, but he loves that stuff. And he and I have a great relationship where I'm making deposits in his life. And so I'm in my office one afternoon. I beat my brains out on this crazy policy, making sure it makes sense, making sure all the bases are covered. And finally I said, you know what? Aaron likes this stuff. And so I walked over to his office and I said, Aaron, do you mind writing this policy? Oh, man, I'd love to. That's exciting. Yes, please. Can I? What? And an hour later, I have a policy emailed to me that's far better than anything I could scratch out. Why? Why was he so happy to do it? Because I'd made some deposits in his life. I had picked up some things he didn't like and did. With me? You say, what do you mean by deposits? Give me some examples. All right. Thank you notes. Doesn't take 10 minutes. When's the last time you wrote your bus captain a thank you? Personal pastoral thank you note. Hey, thank you for the dedication of the bus ministry. Pfft, throw it in the mail. When's the last time that you just walked up and patted somebody on the back? Man, thank you for being a part of my team. Man, it's a great honor for me to be able to work alongside of you. When's the last time you stood up publicly for somebody who did something menial and said, hey, I just want to thank the janitor. Man, doesn't this place look good? We take it for granted so many times, but wow, there's not a piece of paper anywhere on the floor. It didn't cost you anything. It took 20 seconds. When's the last time you took the bus team to McDonald's after calling? Oh, it costs 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks. I don't know. But that's a small price to pay. Right? Okay. All right, third. This is my D coming out, okay? Delegation without accountability always equals subpar performance. Always, 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 always. Okay? So you inspect what you expect. Now, I know it's a strong statement. Delegation without accountability always equals subpar performance. And different people need different levels of accountability. Okay? Self-starters don't need as much accountability as others. And we must remember that there's a difference between delegating and abdicating. Some of us are great at that, aren't we? Here, do that. And we never go back and look. Well, that's abdicating. It's just, okay, as a leader, we're tasked with leading the organization. And part of leadership is making sure the job gets done, however that works with that individual. Okay? However that works. And so mark this down. I wish I didn't have time to get anything in your notes. But people who require more accountability than others generally think they need it less.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, why are you looking over my shoulder? And you can't, as a leader, you can't say, because knucklehead, last time you failed. All right? And people like that also tend to chafe under direct accountability, which is exactly what they need to succeed in the task that you've given them. And you as a leader need to figure that out. Sometimes it's by trial and error. Sometimes it's, Brother Chris, could you take care of this for me? And a week later I look and it's not done, and I come back and I say, Chris, could you take care of this for me? And come back in a week later and it's not done. At some point I have to say, okay, Chris, I'm going to check with you tomorrow. Okay? I got to make sure it's done. And then in the future, I'm going to recognize that if I give him a task, I'm going to have to double check with him soon to make sure that it happened. Okay, everybody with me? So, inspect what you expect. And so, all right, at this point, I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. Can I do that? I'm telling you, this is last minute thrown together material, all right? So I just threw words on a paper, all right? So we're going to shift gears just a little bit right here, and I'm going to talk about this concept of inspecting what you expect, all right? So I'm going to drill down just a little further right here and talk about performance management. You have to know as a leader what you want. And this is where a lot of chaos happens in leadership. If you can't define your mission, your core values, your vision, they can't accomplish it. And I probably could stop right there and say, go at it. Figure it out. I tell, when I was in Hope Sound, one of the things I did there is I taught an expository preaching class. And one of the things that I did in that class is I'd say, guys, every sermon has to pass the 3 a.m. alarm test. Eric, you remember that? The 3 a.m. alarm test. And that is, if I call you at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning and say, what are you preaching today? You'd better be able to give it to me in a sentence. Okay? And the same is true right here. If somebody in your organization has been given a task, you need to be able to give them the reason why in a sentence. What are we doing at GBS? Well, we have this great mission statement that exists out there, and I've just kind of ignored it in my personal world. I believe in the mission statement. But you know what? If you ask me what I'm doing at GBS, what my vision is for GBS, is training young people to do the work of ministry. That's what we're doing. Okay? That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And so it doesn't matter what you are doing at God's Bible School in college. If I come to you in the kitchen and I say, Mrs. Byer, what are you doing? She says, I'm training young people to do the work of ministry. Reminds me of the old boy down at NASA. Guy was taking a tour and they were showing him all these grand structures at NASA, and this is in the 60s, and everything's great, and they go over to this guy who's sweeping. He said, sir, what are you doing? He stood up, straightened his shoulders, and he said, I'm working to put a man on the moon. I like that. Sure. And if your vision for your organization, the component that you're responsible for as a leader isn't that clear, you need to make it that clear.
That's right. Amen.
You have to know what you want. Then you have to know who you're working with. All right? Who do you have? Many of us deal with volunteers, right? And so you have to know what you've got to work with. You can put heavy loads on some people. You can't put a very heavy load on others. You have to understand that. It's not on the PowerPoint, but the questions to help you know what your vision is would be this. Where do you want to go? Okay, that's important. And you know you failed when you ask your people under you where you're going and it's something different. Okay? That's just, I know that's out of sequence just a little bit, but I feel like that's important. So know who you are working with. So I would challenge you that everything that you do should be evaluated based on these next 3 items. Okay? The 3 C's that I feel are essential to leading an organization. Know who you're working with. Competence ought to be extremely high on your list. The basic question for this is, can they do what you're asking them to do? That question's no fun as a leader. Because it's right there that I've had to have somebody come into my office and say the job's not getting done. You know it. I know it. We've tried to coach you. We've tried to motivate you. I've tried to point out flaws to you. It's not getting done. It's time for you to go. I don't care who you are, unless you're some major CEO, unless you're Donald Trump. There's nothing fun about pointing your finger and saying you're fired. Nothing is fun about that. All right? But if they're not competent, if they're not getting the job done, you've got to move on. Even in a volunteer world, there have been many bus ministries and outreach ministries killed because of incompetence. And people haven't been willing to say, you're done, you're done. What if they leave the church? You hate it. You hate it. You try to do things, you try to plug them in somewhere else. But you've got to remember the bigger picture of the kingdom of God and the advancement of the ministry. Okay? Competence. So you ask, can they do what you're asking? Can they be coached? Competence. Then secondly, commitment. Are they committed to you as an individual? Are they committed to the organization? Listen, if you have a bus captain who's attending another church on Sunday night, something's wrong. If you're a denominational leader and you have a conference going on, or you have a ministerial going on, and your pastors are going to some other popular ministerial, something's wrong. Okay? Commitment level. So are they committed to you? Are they committed to the organization? Are they committed to the vision and mission and core values? Here's the application question. What would it be like at your organization if everyone put forth the same effort as that employee? Think about that. But that's easy, isn't it? Let me change that just a little bit. What would your organization look like if everyone put the same effort into it as you? Commitment. Many times, mark this down, many times a drop in performance is directly linked to a drop in commitment. Many times, not all the time, not all the time, many times. Third, chemistry. Are you compatible with the team? Not too long ago, there was an employee who was very competent. Employee was committed. But the entire time he was doing a good job, it was negative. Can't believe this is happening. Can't believe that the school would waste money here. Can't believe that President Loper is going to let this happen. If President Loper knew this was going on, okay, all the time. I knew what was going on. This went on for months. We tried to coach. We drew the line in the sand and said, man, cut it out. Your negativity is killing your area. Finally, I'm trying to say this in a way that no lines can be attached, all right? So finally, I received an email from this employee. I want you to know you're doing a terrible job. I want you to know that if you were a great leader, you would do X, Y, and Z. If you were a great leader, you'd fire all these other employees. GBS, we have radios. I read the email, I didn't. I read the email. I walked out of my office to my secretary's office and I say, I'm getting ready to fire somebody. Just get ready. You're the HR director. Go pull his file. And I walked back into my office and I grabbed my radio and I called the person in charge of that department and I said, hey, come up here and bring so-and-so with you. He said, can I call you? I said, yes, call me. So he called me and said, what's this about? And I read him the email and I said, this is the end of the road. It's over. He said, okay, all right. So they came in my office. This guy that sent the email seemed shocked that he's in my office. And I said, have a seat. And I said, I believe you're a Christian. I believe that you have put forth a strong work ethic here. I believe that you have been committed to your job, but the chemistry isn't there. And what you just did in that email is not going to be accepted by anyone on this campus. And so because of chemistry, you're done. Now, that's not fun. My heart rate's up talking about it right now. And as Christians, it's not just about pointing your finger and saying you're fired. There's a soul at stake. Right? And so while I have to draw the line in a very severe way, I also have to be able to still shake his hand when I see him at various church events. When I say church, big church. I have to be able to smile when I run to him at the store, right? I want it all possible for when this guy looks at me that he has confidence in me, right? All of those components. And so I said to him, it's over. Okay, I want you to understand that we're done. All right, you understand that? Yes, I understand it. But here's the deal. I'm going to give you 45 days of pay. I'm going to let you live in the house. for that period of time. And if you need it longer, just let me know. All right? And I tell you what, if you'll resign right now, and I have it by 4 o'clock today, we'll turn it in as a resignation, not a firing, so that you don't have to tell people that you were fired, okay? So, all right, a coerced resignation is better than putting fired down, all right? He said, okay. I ran into this individual a month ago, and I had no problem walking up to him and saying, man, it's good to see you. Everything going all right? How's your new job going? Okay? I wrote a recommendation for his new job. This guy's a hard worker. He just wasn't compatible. The chemistry was off with us. But I think he'll serve you well. Are you with me? Now, here's the deal. I'm giving you some invaluable, what I think is invaluable tips and how to be in a position where you can have these conversations and they not be difficult. Because if you have, we have changed all the evaluations at GBS. Okay, we're in this new cycle. You know what my evaluation form is? These 3 C's. Are you committed? Are you competent? And how's the chemistry? And we evaluate them. We sit them down across the seat from us and we have the conversation. You know what, Brother Faye? The chemistry is just off a little bit. Okay, it just feels like you're negative recently. And could you work on that? Okay?
How do you spell negative?
And so next year, if it's down another tick, we know we have issues. And these tools, guys, help you, ladies. These tools help you as a leader, okay? Everybody with us. All right, that's the end of my slides. But I want to challenge you as leaders to conduct regular evaluations, regular alignments. Ask the question, where am I going? Where are my people going? Let them know out of the gate what's going to be on the final exam, i.e. the evaluation. Okay, my entire staff knows the 3 C's are going to be present. Okay, that's what you're going to be evaluated on. There's no fear out there of what I'm going to measure you by. This is it. All right? And then I will give you a couple of tips to have difficult conversations, because these aren't fun. Oh, heaven help us. I don't want to do it again. So here we go. Look at somebody and say this. If they're not, Chris, let's go back to you. Chris, my friend, all right? And Chris isn't doing the job, all right? I've given him a job. It's been a week now, and he still hadn't done the job, and I've given him, okay? And so I come to Chris and I say, Brother Chris, man, I think I messed up. Okay? I think I messed up. I didn't do a very good job explaining myself, and I know I struggle in this area, but listen, here's where I'm trying to go with that. Here's what I really want to happen. You understand that? So what has happened in that conversation? Chris doesn't feel like I'm beating him up. Now, Chris is a leader. He knows I am, okay? But if he's just a schlep out there, no, I'm just kidding. They feel and they say, you know what? The preacher made a mistake. The leader made a mistake. I'm going to try to help him. Okay? Now, if you don't follow through, we have to ratchet it up just a little higher. But most of the time, it's right there that there are very clear lines, and they'll adjust. Okay? I made a mistake. There's nothing wrong with you taking the blame. Maybe you weren't clear. You may think you are, but maybe it's a communication problem. Try to clarify it. Okay? Then another thing is, Brother Chris, you know, I asked you a couple weeks ago to make sure the buses were washed every Sunday, and they're not. And so how can I help you do your job? Can I buy you some better supplies? Do you need some additional help? Are the buckets not sufficient? How can I help you do your job? Okay? Chris is saying, wow, this guy's interested. This guy, he isn't just putting me out here on this island. Okay? And it ratchets up a little higher. Brother Chris, you know, we've talked about this, that those 3 C's are very important to me, right? What are those? Their competence and their commitment and chemistry. Man, those are extremely important here. And Chris, you're doing a great job at chemistry. Man, I'm so glad you're on the team. Your spirit's great. You're doing wonderful. And your commitment to the organization is phenomenal, man. To even be around on Saturdays, to be available to change the oil and wash the van, your commitment's off the chart. But Chris, I feel like that we need to do a little work in this area of competence. The follow-through is just not happening. Okay? Can you help me with that? Okay, that's the third conversation, all right? What you're doing is you're doing stepping stones. Instead of me walking into Chris's office and saying, Chris, I told you 3 weeks ago to wash the buses before they... What's wrong with you? Now, that doesn't help. He's a volunteer. Okay? He'll say, you can take your buses and shove them somewhere, all right? I'm not doing that. I don't want to work for a guy who's mean. Okay? And if you can, instead of you taking that blame yourself, say the team, the bus ministry team feels that. They feel disrespected when you don't follow through. You know, when the bus driver gets on and the bus captain gets on and there's trash all over the van, can you imagine how it makes them feel? Okay? What are you doing? You're tying competence to commitment to the team in chemistry. All right, and if they're doing well in those other two, then use that. All right. And then the last thing, and this is not, I had to fire this guy on the spot, okay? So you have to do that at times. But if it's not so egregious that you have to make that decision, one of the best things you can do is go to someone who's terrible in these areas and just look at them and say, you know what? I think it's time to begin a transition. And, man, I love you, and I don't want to do anything to hurt you. But, you know, it's March right now. In September, we're going to go another direction in that ministry. And so you have plenty of time. If you want to go somewhere else, I understand. Here are some other opportunities for you. But in September, we're done, okay? Okay. All right? We're going to use that language. We're going to begin a transition. All right? And don't be surprised when you use that lingo, leaders, that you don't hear through the grapevine that this person has started a transition and you don't even have to take the blame for it. They're looking for an out. They may be snowed themselves. They just need that little nudge out of the nest. Okay? Let's begin a transition. It's so unique how that happens. Oh, that was their idea. You know, okay, great, good. I like that idea. It's wonderful. It's good. I second that motion. All right?
That's the chemistry we're talking about.
All right. Brother Fay, that's it. And I know it's all over the map. All right. If you have questions, I can try to answer, but hopefully it's tools that you can use. Any quick questions? It's about time. Yes, sir.
I've been in the church for quite a while.
Yes, sir.
And I know at a work situation, you have to command that chain of command.
Yes, sir.
Is that such a thing in the church?
Chain of command? Absolutely. According to Scripture, there is. According to Scripture, especially the pastoral epistles, there is.
Usually, if I have a problem and somebody tells someone, they say, go tell the pastor.
Okay.
Everything goes to the pastor.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
I was to the board and they tell me, go to the pastor.
Right. And in a church setting, my setting's a little unique now, but I was 17 years in the church setting, and the buck stopped right here. Absolutely. And most pastors are okay with that because you cannot, listen, here's another, I should have had this in the notes. You can't manage, you can't lead without information. So if you stifle information chains, you're killing yourself. And so I'm cool with that. Come talk to the pastor. That's fine. I need information to make informed decisions.
I think if you want to come to the board and just to bring up the meeting,
Yeah,
having that type of following.
yeah, I understand. I understand.
Go to the pastor.
There's a place to go to board members if it's not being done. I'm a pastor, though, so I don't like that. Okay. Any other questions? Quickly. Yes, sir.
How do you handle the chemistry if one person is, say, negative or whatever, and several people think that he might be right in how the direction of the organization or church should be going, and the rest of the church or members are not? How do you handle deciding which way to go you should go, or who you are as an organization?
Yeah.
Initially, how do you handle that from?
Yeah, I go to that individual who's negative. And what I do is I would say, listen, man, I want you to know I appreciate you and the input. And I even I find something I like in their idea, okay? And I say, but the way we're doing it is wrong. And so let's focus on how we can implement that in the right way. Or you can go to them and say, you know what, we're not going to do that. Okay, that's not a direction we're going to head. And so if you don't mind, you know, there are other people who are buying into that. If you can just back off a little bit, and if that doesn't work, call a meeting with those who are following after this guy and just say, we're not going to go this way, and here's why. Here is where we're going, okay? You've got to know where you're going, but that's how I would handle it. That's an ugly situation. So I think it's time. Any other questions real quick? You can come see me if you do. Hopefully it wasn't too jumbled.